Welcome to our live webinar on a playbook for optimizing your assembly line with digital workflows. Many of the errors that occur in manufacturing operations can be traced to paper-based work instructions and manual data entry. Instruction pages get lost, misplaced, or forgotten, and the result is lost time and product defects. Many manufacturers implement digital static work instructions, sometimes referred to as paper behind glass, as the first step in decreasing such workforce errors. But it is just a first step. Digital and dynamic guided workflows are the linchpin of a successful start to digitizing an entire production line. Today, you'll learn how leading manufacturers have implemented effective digital discrete assembly lines and expanded beyond simple digital work instructions, all while leveraging connections to sensors, machines, scales, and other devices to build error-proof workflows. In this webinar, you will learn how your operations should look with digital work instructions and what technology may be missing. You'll learn use cases you should consider implementing on the path to a fully digitized assembly line. And you'll also see real manufacturing examples of fully digitized lines. Jen Diamond is the product marketing lead for Tulip. She has more than 10 years of experience in advising industries on how to meet operational challenges through manufacturing technology. Sebastian Laerdal is the solutions engineer for Tulip. He has more than 10 years experience in MES systems for the discrete, process, and pharmaceutical industries, as well as expertise in systems development and technical leadership.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Jen, and so I'll take you through the presentation along with Sebastian, my colleague. Before we get started, I just want to give everyone just a quick overview of Tulip. So Tulip is the leader in frontline operations, and it's helping companies around the world equip their workforce with connected apps, leading to higher quality, improved efficiency, and end-to-end traceability across their operations. And so Tulip is a cloud-based platform that allows those closest to operations to take advantage of composability and edge connectivity to digitally transform processes, guide operations, track production, and gain a real-time holistic view of operations. So this is the agenda for today. So we'll first kind of go through digital work instructions foundation, why we need digital work instructions, what is the difference between digital work instructions and paper behind glass, and why we need a little bit more. And then we'll go through going beyond digital work instructions and 5 things that you can do to make digital work instructions better for that end user. We'll then go through 2 different examples of what this looks like in real life. And then we'll show a demonstration with GIFs that show what each step of a potential workflow would look like. And then, of course, we'll end with the Q&A session. So before we get started, we just want to do a quick poll. So the question is, what are you currently using for work instructions? And the options are nothing, paper, uploaded PDFs, or a digital work instruction solution.
And the results are the majority, 40%, say that they are using paper. The next highest number, 27%, say they are using uploaded PDFs. Another 27% is saying they're using digital work instruction solution, and 7% say they're using nothing.
So it sounds like we have people from all different parts of the journey. So people that are kind of just starting, thinking about things with paper, have started doing uploaded PDFs and what that looks like, and more advanced with digital work instruction. So I think the way that we have this webinar planned out, this will be beneficial for everyone that's on the call. So that's great. So in this first section, we just kind of want to go through a background as to why digital work instructions are important. And so there's a few different reasons, as you can see here on the slide, why it's important to rethink paper-based and digital static work instructions, that paper behind glass or PDFs. And a lot of them are from like recent events. So there's a lot of like growing complexity in terms of the industrial machinery, the things that people are building, a lot more like robots, and a lot just like more complex things, and a lot more like customization is what we're seeing across the industry. We also see, of course, the big changeover where we have a lot of retiring experts, and they're taking with them their expert knowledge, which is unfortunate, but there's an opportunity there, I think. And with that, you also have this new generation of workers that are used to using technology for things. So they're looking for something that is intuitive and they know how to use. And then we're also seeing, along with that, is of course the labor shortage around the globe. And so that means that hiring is becoming a lot more competitive, and also that people are not staying quite as long as they used to 5-10 years ago. And so there's also that employee turnover, and that can impact efficiency. So it's really important to get those people using whatever solutions are operating at 100% as quickly as possible. We're also seeing, of course, changing demands with the pandemic coming to a close. There's still things that are happening from a supply chain perspective that it's causing a lot of people to need to be agile and adjust their operations relatively quickly. And then also, even as people are coming back on site, it's not as many people. A lot of people are taking the advantage of being able to work from home and supporting operations remotely. So we're seeing that a lot more, even as the pandemic is kind of coming to a close. And then so for requirements, we're seeing that it's really important to capture that expertise of the experts that are leaving, and then use that expertise to get people up to speed really quickly. So that is one kind of requirements of what we need from work instructions. The second one is something that is dynamic, and so it's not having to shuffle through like 10 different PDFs to find the right one and potentially using the wrong PDF for work instructions, presenting the right instructions and making it super clear what they need to do without them having to do any sort of guesswork or try to figure that out on their own. And then also making sure that it's streamlined for their experience and making them more productive, because we want to meet those demands of those like more tech savvy workers that are expecting a lot more, and just making them more effective more quickly. And then also there's an opportunity here to capture data for tracking and visibility, which would allow you to further optimize these work instructions. So figuring out where people are getting stuck, figuring out like, oh, potentially this line has not enough people, or people are taking a little bit longer, so we need more. So like kind of figuring out that optimization is really helpful to have that data. And then of course, you want it to be easy to update and adapt. And so that goes back to that changing demands and that need for agility. And then lastly is remote assistance and real-time feedback. Because you're not having as many people on site, you are missing that kind of interactive people kind of walking around and being able to assist people. So having the option to kind of automate that feedback or provide remote assistance when needed is an important thing to make sure that people are operating at 100% efficiency. So then in terms of like putting in a solution, it's also important that you maintain that solution. So there's certain things that you need to think about for making those work instructions sustainable. So you want to make sure that it's easy to edit, and so be able to update that those work instructions, because if you don't, a potential downfall is that they're constantly out of date and people don't use them, and that is a big risk. You want to make sure that they're interactive and suit that tech savvy kind of new worker, and avoid things that are like too bulky and a nuisance for the operator. And then I think the last one is making sure that the work instructions are really tailored to that skill set. So potentially having different sets of work instructions depending on how familiar the person is with the tasks that they need to do. So having a set of work instructions for someone that is brand new to help them get up to speed, and then a kind of fair kind of version for someone that is more experienced and knows what they're doing, just to kind of give them reminders and track what they're doing. And also, potential downfall is making sure that there aren't too many screens. So not having a screen for work instructions, another one for ERP, and then another one for another system. It can get really tedious and can be a time suck and kind of waste a lot of people's time. So that's something that I would keep in mind. So I'll hand it off to Sebastian.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. So what we have here is an example of what we just discussed, and also what we'll discuss could look like, right? So how can like a digital work instruction can look like? So this is just an example, especially today with the new technologies we have. You should be able to edit and build your own, or use like some out of the shelf. We tend to recommend like a more like focused approach where you can build your own solution, but we can talk about this more and more afterwards. So what you would want is an application that will show you instructions based on your product, right? So on the left side here, we have an example where you have multiple products, and an operator will be able to select the product they're working on, maybe the work order, load the instructions, and then display the details of those instructions. As Jen just said, those instructions could be based on the skill of the operator too, but in the first step, let's say, just visualizing those and making those available to everybody is going to be extremely useful to your operators. Then you can see on the right side of the screen, you have like work instructions that are navigable, so you can move from step to step to define, like go into the details of the tasks, especially if they are complex. And then you can embed like pictures, videos, schematics, maybe even some CAD files, depending on the information that the operator will need. So what we're showing here is just one type of view. We condense everything into one screen, but obviously all of what you see here could be divided in multiple kind of interfaces for the operator to maybe first scan the work order, select the work order or the product, and then get the specific work instructions. So how can we put this together? So if we go to the next slide, we'll see an example of how you could do this with Tulip, for example, in this case. So you want, and as Jen was talking about this too, you want those to be very highly configurable. So this is where a platform like Tulip, and there are maybe other ones out there, can allow you to quickly configure your own set of work instructions. So you'll be able to define the steps based on the process, define like your terminal for the operators, embed rich data, rich instructions with like videos and CAD files, text, and so on. Configure logic to define how those instructions will appear, when they will appear, and then maybe even collect data as we talked and we'll talk about more in details. And then just like display different kind of objects, right? So configure the way that data will appear in terms of color, size, whatever, and like any kind of information you want to display. So this is what we're talking about today, how to quickly like take those kind of instructions, configure them, and then how can we optimize this and like where to go on from just like those, let's say, basic digital work instructions. So the goal, and this is what we'll discuss more today, is to now do more with fewer people on site. So how do we optimize those instructions to cater to more people, exchange information, capture information from those work instructions. How can you use those work instructions to error-proof? So maybe poka-yoke the process, collect data with less errors, reduce waste in terms of time, but maybe also in terms of rework by collecting better data and enforcing better practices across the shop floor. And at the same time, like all of this will bring like a reduce in downtime from, for example, rework or stopping the line to call maybe supervisors and so on, improving like the making of decisions by like gaining visibility across the shop floor and also historical data that will be gained by those like, let's say, advanced work instructions. So let's look at how to go beyond this and like solve those different problems. So we have like several steps that we will go through, myself and Jen, and I will take the first one, which is the gaining visibility and collecting data, and then we go through connecting devices, breaking the silos between systems and people and groups, and displaying data via like different kind of devices, trying to be device agnostic, right, for the operators, and then looking at more advanced capabilities like visions and AI, and like what can be brought, like the kind of technology you can bring to your operators today. But let's focus first on production visibility then. We'll tackle all of the different steps and go first with a set of questions, and then we'll look at how that could look on the shop floor in terms of technologies and maybe like the way applications would look like. So if we focus on production visibility and collecting data, let's think of like, what do you want to start reflecting on, right? And what we or other suppliers would want to discuss with you to make sure like this is the right use case for you, making sure that we're tackling it right to give you the most value with that specific use case, and maybe disqualifying it as well, right? So when it comes to visibility, the first thing to ask ourselves and yourself is like the kind of data that you're collecting today, via maybe paper or Excel that we saw like in a lot of cases you are doing today, or even with digital work instructions. I'm sure even people who are using digital work instructions today still use paper somewhere. So there's still like opportunity maybe to collect more data there. And so what data are you missing, right? So what data are you collecting? Maybe you would want to stop collecting from paper and be able to gather in a solution that will give you also more knowledge of what's happening across the shop floor. So that's the first thing. And then how can we like incorporate data collection into the workflows, right? So let's say we are using digital work instructions. It's great to visualize for your operators what they have to do. But now that you have those kind of solutions, you might be able to use this. And we have a lot of customers starting there where they have work instructions and they can start doing basic time analysis from this, right? Knowing when an operator starts working on the work instructions, maybe even knowing like every single steps of the work instruction, knowing which one is maybe taking more time for some operators or for all of the operators, and using this for training or maybe for aligning their baseline, for example. What kind of KPIs are you interested in, right? So it's kind of like starting with the goal in mind here, like what do you want to show, what do you want to know, so that will help us and you figure out which kind of data should be collected, right? So it could be production counters, could be like cycle time information, quality information for different kind of KPIs that you will want to display and to be aware of. And then how do you gather the data today? So it kind of goes with that first question. Are you collecting it manually or automatically, right? What can we do and improve here? Are you collecting, or would you want to collect data from different systems? And we'll talk more about this later. And how do you want to present it, right? Can we gain kind of real-time visibility on all this data that we will be gathering or that we are gathering today? So what kind of dashboard do you want, and so on? So the goal here is to gain full visibility into historical and real-time data across the different teams, lines, and the whole enterprise, right? So let's take a quick look at how this could look like. So here is an example of a dashboard that's showing, here in this case, it's more of auditing data. It could be production data, it could be machine monitoring data. It doesn't really matter, right? Like the question here is like, what kind of data do we collect? And then we can focus on how to show it. So you want to be able to create like customizable real-time dashboards, right? That will show like data as live as possible, and also like make them printable. You want to be able to monitor your production, right? So that's where it's important to know. That will help you, based on what you want to monitor, that will help you decide, like figure out what data you want to collect, whether you want to see cycle times, maybe you want to be able to show like, let's say, failure analysis with Pareto charts, for example, that are going to help you identify and solve issues, right? So this kind of visibility will help you maybe also fix your process or improve your process in the future. And we talked before a lot about connecting. I mean, we're focusing on work instructions, so we're going to talk a lot about basically collecting data from manual activities from operators, but you also want a solution that be able to collect data from machines and tools. And we'll talk about this more in a subsequent step, I think in the next step actually. But like, that's also where like, collecting those devices will be helpful to get more insights on your process. So yeah, this is the goal here, right? Giving you more visibility across the different areas, and this is what this kind of solution should do for you. I'll pass it back to Jess, who can talk more about devices.
Yeah, perfect, Sebastian. You queued it up perfectly for me. So as Sebastian was mentioning, it's a potential area that could be improved is collecting data from different machines, devices, what have you. So if you have, say, like a scale and you want to collect information about how much like material is used, or if you have a step where you're checking to make sure every part of an assembly is there, like capturing that information from the scale is helpful for kind of going back to see where things went wrong, if you have like a defect later on. So there's certain places where it is important to be able to connect to save that time and to make sure that there's accurate capture of information, because, you know, if you're continually updating information by hand, so typing in numbers that you're seeing on a scale, for instance, there's a potential that you're going to type in the wrong thing, or if you're doing it like 100 times an hour, like it's very, you know, burdensome from, you know, a brain perspective. So that's something that a lot of our customers are doing. So that's something that you can look to do. And then also, is there other ways that you could use IIoT in order to help streamline a workflow? So for instance, if it makes sense, instead of entering a number to capture something that's coming in for a work order or like a material that's coming in, and capturing that from a traceability standpoint, maybe you could have like a barcode scanner, or potentially like a camera to capture information about what is arriving instead of having somebody take the time to type it in. So there's like different things like that where you can connect different devices, machines, what have you, to be able to make that process easier for that frontline worker and to ease that gathering of process. So what that looks like is being able to, like I said, connect it. So there's a lot of different things that you could potentially connect. So for instance, if you wanted to like automate going to the next step, but you don't want them like touching a screen or a mouse, and there's an opportunity for them to progress, like a foot pedal or a push button is a way to like progress it. Scale, scanners, printers for collecting information, for printing out things like labels. So you could automate the label producing process. So it would, depending on where you are in a step, it would print a label for you, so the person wouldn't have to go in and manually like say what the label needs to say, for instance. Then you could have things like humidity, temperature, pressure sensors for measuring ambient conditions, instead of having someone have like manually type that in. And then you can check to see, you know, this particular product didn't come out the way that it should have. Was there an issue with humidity or temperature? And you can look back and you have that information right there. There's things like vibration and current sensing, which is really helpful for if you have like a machine that you want to see what the status is. And so you can connect it to, basically you can have like a vibration or current sensor on that machine, so you can see whether it's on or not without needing to connect to the machines if it's like, say, a legacy or a specialty piece of equipment. You also have things like photoelectric and proximity sensors and on lights you can install at the top of your stations and be able to see if somebody's having an issue and be able to walk by them without having to, you know, constantly be walking around. Pick to light is a really popular thing too. So making sure, so as you can see on the screen, and I'm sure Sebastian will go through it in the demo, but you could have a light strip that prompts what actually needs to be picked up for a certain step, so that they're correctly picking from a selection of different bins. And then we also, and I feel like, sorry, Sebastian will talk more about this, but we also have like cameras for computer vision for helping people navigate tasks and getting that real-time feedback or automating specific tasks. And then there's networked and stranded machines that you can connect to as well. So I'll hand it back to Sebastian to talk through the next step.
Thanks, Jen. Okay, let's talk now. So we talked about connecting devices. Let's talk about connecting people and solutions now. So what we're interested in is how to gather information and bring information to our operators, right? So the idea is still to try to make their life easier. So how can we bring in sensitive and useful information right on time? So for example, it could be bill of material, right? So like kind of information that you would want your operators to see real time. Could be work orders, bill of material, maybe material specifications or details coming from a PLM solution, right? So you will want to ask yourself, where can I retrieve that kind of information? So that would be to, let's say, break silos with third-party solutions, and we'll show example. Then another kind of like silo we want to break to is between teams, and we see this a lot. Like it's sometimes difficult to communicate between teams. Operators have to assemble things, and then every time maybe there's an issue, they need to call their supervisor, who might be the line supervisor, might be busy with other things. How do we easily improve communication between the team, and then also outside of the team, maybe with a quality team who needs to come later to look at defects and might not have all the context information, right? So what can we do here to bring everybody together and help information flow, which is usually the goal of IT solutions, but it's sometimes difficult to achieve. So the idea here is to make it easier for an operator to complete a task faster and effectively, right, with a streamlined workflow. So I mean, exchanging data faster with the different systems and different teams. So we have two examples we can show. The first one for like connecting with like external solutions, right? So how do we like retrieving data? So here we have an example of a terminal where like an operator will be able to visualize, for example, a list of work orders that they can work on. And that's kind of like similar to what we showed initially for simple work instructions, right? So this data can be retrieved from different solutions. You want a solution that can bi-directionally communicate with those like different kind of ERPs, for example, NetSuite, Dynamics, SAP, which are like the main ones around there. I know there's so many ERPs, and that's also often the difficulties. How do you support every single ERP in the world? Like we have a solution for this. But that's always like a place like to spend some time on in terms of integration to make sure that this data is easily accessible to the operator. So we want to put this kind of information. We can put maybe more details like bill of materials, shipping information, and so on from different solutions, which might be like those commercial out-of-the-shelf solution, and might be also some of your like homegrown solutions as well, right? So we didn't talk about this, but it could be also like some quality solution that you have running on that's writing data to a SQL database, or some testing solutions and so on. And then connecting to even more systems like Shippo for shipping, for example. We have examples of customers doing this today, or geolocation if you want it, right? Like being really open to whatever solution is out there. It's really what you want to be, right? Keep your solutions nimble so you can get creative and really get all the data you need to your operation. Then let's move on to like a next example of how to improve, to break silos. That would be like between the team, like improving communication. So we talked about like the different tools to communicate. We can like use those like different tools to exchange kind of like, data between the teams. At the bottom, we can see example of like Slack, Outlook, Teams. We could be using also more like digital solutions like Kanban cards that could be built into an application, also using the physical objects like end-on lights. How do you warn people that's an issue is happening on the shop floor? So here, the first place to start would be having an application where you can collect that kind of data, right? So you can collect comments, information, maybe take pictures and so on, make that data available, and then exchange it to the rest of the team via those communication tools we discussed, like what I talked about, Slack, like the whole Dynamics solution or Google solution. We have some customers who want to use WhatsApp, for example, like maybe more in Europe, all the kind of communication devices and tools solutions. And digital solution will help you keep track of the context, right? And also then visualize at any time what's happening and where. For example, what station is the issue happening at, right? This is something that can be quickly contextualized, made available, so an operator doesn't even have to enter this information, right? So it's also simplify the process for an operator. You just press a button, open an end-on event or open a quality event, and that's being tracked in the solution. So then you can manage and review the different events, visualize them on dashboards. We talked about visibility at the beginning, or visualize them with like more physical cues like end-on lights, for example. That's it like for how to really like break the silos between teams and solutions. I'll let Jen take it over, talking about different ways of displaying those applications.
So I guess an important way to make sure that people are using the work instructions is making sure that they can use them in all different types of conditions and in different places. So in this section, we'll kind of talk about different interfaces. So basically like matching to what you have on the shop floor, so what devices are available. So whether it's having computers at different stations already, or if you're a kind of team that likes to use mobile devices or tablets, that's really important to know. As your operators are doing tasks, they need to move around from a different area, or are they like stationary? So that's the kind of things that you would want to think about for what makes sense to have for devices on your shop floor. And then another thing to think about is, right, if they're stationary or if they're moving from different station to different station. And then do they need to have their hands free? There's certain applications where maybe it makes sense to have something that would allow them to view instructions without having to use their hands. So we'll go through what that looks like. And so basically you want to make sure that you have displays that are helpful but don't hinder different tasks. So you can see here on the first one on the left, there's a computer that's stationary that's there. I believe this one is a touch screen. So as he's going through the different tasks, you can touch the screen and move on to the next task, and that makes sense for what he's doing. But there's also ways like with the connected worker that if like you don't want him touching the screen because maybe his hands are dirty from using the 3D printer, maybe he could have like a push step to go to the next step, or I'll show on the next slide is like a wearable, so you'd wear like a headset. There's also mobile phones. So this is actually from one of our customers that we did a case study with, and this is a robot, and it's like a production line, and he is able to mark that he's completing tasks with his phone. That's, you can put it in his pocket or carry it with him. So that's a really important thing for them to be able to do. We also have customers that use DMG Mori. and have basically for the DMG mooring machines, which are like the big CNC machines, and they have a few other things, I think, you could have a Tulip on that screen and have them like go through different work instructions. So there's that availability too, to make sure that they're using the machine correctly. And they also can report different things, like say, if the machine is down or machine is like doing a weird thing, they can record that information as well. So those are some examples of different interfaces that you could potentially have work instructions on. So as I mentioned, here is the wearables. There's a few different wearables on the market. There's RealWear and HoloLens. So you can see here in this example, you can have like a 3D object and be able to twist around, which you can't necessarily do all that well with a flat screen. And so that will allow the operators to see potentially where things aren't matching up, where there's a potential defect. And also they could potentially have it on like different displays within their view. And that will also keep their hands free too. So they can keep doing their tasks. They can use voice commands to navigate to the next step or enter information. And there's certain environments where you don't want them going back and forth between what they're doing and touching different screens. So it really depends on what the situation is and the environment. So I'll hand it back over to Sebastian.
Okay, so let's go through that. The last one, and I'll try to go fast for the sake of time. This one I have a few examples here, so I'll go through them quickly. So when it comes to vision, I think this is a new kind of capability, and a lot of our customers are asking, what can I do with vision, right? So you might, and maybe I won't go through those questions exactly, like you might want to like start thinking like, where is vision applied? It can be applied in your shop floor, and it's sometimes difficult to visualize. So I welcome you to come and visit us, because we have like a lot of great demos here, or come also whenever we're on trade shows. We like to show examples of those, but you might want to think of what's out there today using those kind of capabilities. If you look at Google Apps, for example, like there's a lot of solutions with Google for like text detections, color detection, object recognitions when you do Google search, for example, or the CAPTCHA, for example, that are recognizing objects and things. Or think of like what cars can do, right? They can detect people moving, animal moving. Probably don't see an animal on your shop floor too often, but all of those kind of capabilities that are available today, like with vision capabilities. So the idea is kind of, as Jen just showed earlier, like to really improve, like just like not bother like the operator as much, try to make the integration with the work instructions more seamless by using like just those kind of capabilities to simplify their work. So I'll show you examples quickly that hopefully will help answer those questions of where can I apply it. So first example is just like picking and packing. And so you can see on the screen here, one of our colleagues just doing pick to lights, right? We have lights that are showing where to pick the object from, enabling operator to quickly pick items and pick the right one, like preventing mistakes. So based on a bill of material, we can, and we have a lot of customers doing this in complex manufacturing, where you might have a lot of components to use. And so we want to make sure they use the right one between two different products, because sometimes the components might be very similar. So to avoid mistake, we can also use cameras to monitor that the operator is picking from the right light, and if they are from the wrong one, we can have like a visual cues to alert them. And also use this to seamlessly progress to the next step. Another capability is using character recognition. So here, for example, you can imagine in a reception area, scanning documents, capturing information from the document, and quickly capturing this data, avoiding once again the burden for the operator to manually enter the data into a system onto a piece of paper, and so limiting, like removing mistakes, and also breaking the silos by quickly integrating with an ERP or warehouse management system, for example. The next one will be about quality inspection. So here, like taking like machine learning and AI models, training a model to recognize defects. So the idea would be like not to remove operators from the process, right? But like help them by, for example, focusing on like easy defect detection, so you can quickly qualify or disqualify product. So here we're using machine learning and like snapshots to also like keep track of that product. So you can like quickly just test product, maybe see if it is, we know it's really bad, there's no issue with this product, remove it from the process and take it to rework, instead of having an operator spend time trying to analyze a product and lose time, right? So that's kind of the idea here. And then I believe the last item is tracking material flow. There's many ways of tracking material flow today. If you do it, you can just like scan barcode and just like check if when a product enters a station, for example. here with like vision capabilities, we can like track it by just recognizing a barcode automatically as it enters the station, or here tracking a box, and as the box enters the station that's been maybe linked to a product, then we can bring the right work instructions. So you can know when a product enters. You can this way also like avoid having an operator like do some manual activities. You can simplify the process, and then also track once again start and end time, right? So here you're collecting data, you removing burden from the operator, and also like improving, like limiting mistakes also as well at the same time by showing the right information at the right time. So those are different examples that you can use to where you can bring vision capabilities into your assembly operations to like improve your operator's life and improve also your process and visibility of the process.
So we've talked a lot about different steps and different things that you could potentially add to your work instructions to make them better and optimize the different workflows for those end users and making them more human-centric. And so we reserved some time to go through two different examples of what this actually looks like. So the first one here is with Tiffany. And so if you want to read more about this, this is on our website. And so with Tiffany, they make jewelry, if you haven't heard of them. And so basically they have different plants. And so at this particular plant, they're producing a lot of different pieces of jewelry, and with jewelry that is made with precious metals and expensive jewels. That's like expensive products that you want to make sure that you're tracking everything, you're tracking all the different steps. And so tracking and traceability is really important for them, and being able to improve productivity. So in this example, they were able to implement a work instruction solution and be able to seamlessly track time studies. So basically being able to track how long it takes people to do particular steps. And they were able to improve their productivity with these apps and giving them the ability to access the right work instructions at the right time. And so one of their big things that they kind of came out of this was building solutions around operators and not systems. So making sure that operators were able to use the solutions and that they made sense for them and they were collecting feedback for them. So that was one example, and you can read more about that on the website. The other example is a little bit funner to look at. So this is Laerdal, they're a medical device company, and they produce like medical practice dolls for CPR. Among other things. And so here in this GIF, you can see that this person is putting together an order. And so there's like a lot of different pieces, as you can see, and they're using work instructions as well as computer vision to make sure all the different pieces are there. And they were having a lot of issues with kits going out with parts missing. And by implementing the solution, they were able to reduce their amount of defects down to 0. And they had 0 shipments of missing parts to customers, which is a huge win for them. So this is another example of where vision was really helpful, but also work instructions. So I'll hand it off to Sebastian to walk through the demonstration.
All right, thank you. So we'll take you to a quick demonstration of how to bring all of this together. Like I said earlier, we have like a great demo center here, and so where you'll be able to see more of this. Just for like a sake of like giving you an idea also of how quickly you can build these kind of solutions today. Like this demo here was built in less than a week, in just a few days, right? And it takes all of the examples we just showed together, bring them all together. So the first step here is like station clearance. So we can see here where like an operator is able to like complete tasks based on the product they're working on. So you have a checklist that's requiring them to complete, and you can use this to capture information of whether the station clearance, like the amount of time it can take. You can see at the bottom we're able to use to connect 2 devices here, like to get room temperature, or we could be able to connect to third-party solutions that have this information to maybe enforce quality or just enforce like room conditions for like the execution of the activity, or maybe just to collect for historical data. So that's like the first step, station clearance. Then after the operator went through a station clearance here, they go through like the execution of the operation. So we can see they have to pick a work order. So for example, this work order can be coming from like different sources, could be actually stored in the digital solution, or could be in a third-party solution like an ERP, for example, and connecting to show based on schedule what an operator is required to work on. Could be actually There could be selection or no selection, right? You could decide the way this works. In this case, we're giving the opportunity of the operator to maybe pick one based on maybe the material they have on the line and some knowledge that they have. So they can pull this, confirm the selection, and then start the activity. So then, based on the product they're working on, we can integrate with printers, for example, serialized products based on maybe some templates that you have defined, or retrieve template or serial numbers from or batch number or whatever you're using to track the product, and display it and print it on a Zebra printer, right? So using integration with devices, and we'll see several of them across the line, so you can track the activity between different stations, different operations. Then next step would be the pick to light again. So let's say you have a bit of material, you are working on kind of a complex assembly. You want to make sure that your operators will be picking the right parts and not assembling maybe a slightly different part, creating quality issues. So the solution will be able to display and prompt the operator with the right item to pick, right, to enforce quality once again. We have solutions for pick to light for vision monitoring again. So you can quickly assemble this together and make this available to your operators, poka-yoking your process. So one thing to enforce is making sure that the operator picked the right part. There's still digital instructions, digital work instructions will not solve your process. So it might still be opportunities to double check things. Doesn't mean you have to, but in this case, for example, even though we had that pick to light, we still want the operator to confirm that they actually picked the right color. So using some more vision capabilities, you can add this kind of extra check. Might be overkill in some cases, but you might be aware that there is some risk of an operator still mispicking, and some people might still struggle to follow process sometimes. So that's where you might want to add some more checks. So this is one example of using color detection to enforce the quality of a product, for example, based on the type of product here. Then after that, still using those vision capabilities. In this case here, what we're doing, you can see there's a red light turning on when the bin is emptying. So you can trigger some e-replenishment kind of capabilities. There's multiple ways of doing this. So here we're doing it with vision capabilities. You could do it just by tracking your actual line side inventory. You could maybe have the operator press a button when they visualize that the bin is low, and then the way you alert, you can do it with an end-on light as we're doing here, or with integration with other solutions, maybe with your warehouse management, or having another application. And we like to do this at Tulip, having applications that work together, and having an application that's that's actually supporting maybe your supermarket or your warehouse, and your logistic teams is alerted automatically, right? So this kind of e-replenishment is something that we've seen a lot of use for our customers, and a really easy way to help teams communicate together as well. And then the last step would be just another quality check, right? So here we're integrating with the scale in this case. There's multiple tools you can integrate with to enforce the quality. It could be also vision kind of quality at the end, taking a picture, making sure that the product looks like what it's supposed to look like. In this case, we know the expected weight. So to make sure that the component is not missing any part, we just wait at the end, right? So it's an easy, quick check that's supported by Tulip in this case, by out-of-the-box plug-and-play capabilities with scales, but to enforce quality in a very easy way. And so then you can use this, complete your work order, and track that kind of information, and then gain visibility as you're completing that last step as well.
Perfect. And then a thing to note with Tulip is that so it's a no-code platform, and Sebastian showed it at the beginning. But what this really enables is being able to optimize the work instructions or whatever apps that you have on a continuous basis. So you can deploy an app, see how it goes, see what information that you can collect for data, and then also from just feedback from operators, and be able to take that and be able to optimize it, and so make edits, improve it, deploy it out again. See what worked, see what didn't work, and just continually improve. And so you can do that with work instructions, or you could even add more things. So we'll go through this in a second, but you could add more information as you go, more of these 5 things as you go. So you can start off with just basic work instructions, then add connected devices, and kind of build that. So that's another thing to note about Tulip. So I just mentioned this, but it's really a journey, and so I think important to start with just the foundation. So just getting like work instructions for like the most urgent kind of use cases and the urgent places, and then continually adding improvements to add more value as you go. And so you can do that with Tulip. A thing to note is to test as you create. So we were at a conference a few weeks ago and we had a demo, and it was really helpful because we could see people walking through the demos and they would get like stuck at particular points, and then between demos we could go in and just like change wording or change a picture or whatever it is, and then you could see them actually get it the next time. And so simplicity is key, and then also just making sure that you're focusing on that user experience and observing them as they go through the process to really figure out how you can improve it. And also just listening to them. So building that continuous feedback loops. We have some examples of people that are building these apps, hosts and developers working alongside operators to really build that trust and the continuous feedback loop to make sure that those work instructions are like super helpful for them and not just another thing that they have to do. And then another thing to know is that work instructions is just the start. So you can move on to other things. So production visibility, as Sebastian was talking about earlier, you can find different ways to improve your process. So not just the work instructions, but how you can reconfigure things, move things around to be able to improve your entire process. You can look into traceability, so making sure that you're capturing information about your products to be able to have that information. We do a lot with compliance as well, so you can combine your work instructions with something like an EBR or EDHR or logbooks or what have you. So there's really a lot of things that you can do with work instructions and going beyond work instructions. So with that, I believe we have some time for questions and answers.
We absolutely do, Jen.
Perfect.
I will jump back in and check our list for questions. We have had a few come in. We have a statement and a question from somebody who's saying, my team is comfortable with their paper-based solution. So they're kind of wondering how to get buy-in from both the team and from upper management in order to implement a solution like this.
So we don't want to force sell things. So if you think that you have the best solution in the world, there's no, like, you might want to stick with it, and there might be other opportunities for Tulip, right? Work instructions is not the only one. But if you see a solution, like an opportunity for like Tulip to improve your process in like for work instructions, for example, I mean, we're happy to work with you, like working on like proof of concepts, for example, right? So our solution is very fast to implement, and we have a kind of, it's a plug and play capabilities when it comes to devices and so on. So we love to get into a proof of concept with you and show, kind of like get that bottom up approach where you can show your leadership the value of the product and how Tulip can be applied to your process. We also like to get into workshops and see where the value can be added. We like to, I just had one yesterday with a customer, just looking at high value and like easy to grab, can say low hanging fruits. So we can also focus on this with you and see where there's like value to be added, which might not necessarily be just like work instructions, might be somewhere else, maybe more on the quality side, on the logistics side, right? So Tulip doesn't only stop at work instructions.
Okay. I would also just add to that I think it's important to realize where you're having pain and like something like, reduced quality, a lot of defects, or where you're seeing like a lot of time is being spent. And those are like the best opportunities, I think, for focusing your time and effort with work instructions and really proving that value out really quickly. And then, of course, you can improve that as you go. But I think I would just mention that is a good way to prove that value to get buy-in from higher level management.
Thank you. Another question is, the caller says that we have digital work instructions now, but what is sort of the next step for actually getting to a digital production line, and how long does it take to build a true digital workflow?
So if you already have digital work instructions, I think that's a great first step. I think it really depends on your operations and how do you want to start with just like one production line or how many steps is that? I think it really depends, but we've seen it be between a couple days to like a month or two to kind of get up and running. It really depends on what you want to do and how big of a solution you want to start out with. So I'd say it really depends. And so we, of course, I think we forgot to mention this, but we have the Tulip library. So that's somewhere where you can download apps and kind of get a starting point for something, say, like a digital work instructions set of apps. And we have something that will help you get started. And so that's something that you can kind of use as a starting point. It's, I think, just if you have digital work instructions already, it's kind of copying and pasting those work instructions in and breaking it up into steps that make sense. Would you add anything to that, Sebastian?
Yeah, I mean, that's yeah, exactly what I would say. The one thing I will add is also like just keep focusing on what you said earlier, Jen, like the value and like where do you see like pain points today, the value, and focus on the easy solutions first, and starting there and we can help you with this as well, right? So it's kind of the same answer as earlier, but focusing on value and easiness to go on with the next step.
That's interesting. It kind of leads to our next question, just to be able to get a little bit more specific. If you were getting started on a digital workflow, how do you pick the right first use case to try? Because I imagine that there's a lot of different options, and are there certain types that are either easier to implement or other sort of best ways to get started in order to show success quickly?
If you want to work with us, like we recommend, and feel free to start on your own, to just look at the process and see where are the pain points, as Jen was saying, and then which one are like the easiest to start with, like to get confident with the platform here, and start building solid ground to expand upon. If we look at what we showed today, these are like already like we talk about like semi-advanced solutions. So that's where we like to start with first the basic work instructions. If we took at like examples of what we do with customers, we build work instructions. We try to support like multiple, like we do, let's say, advanced work instructions. We're supporting multiple products. And then once we have this baseline, then we'll start integrating with solutions, with devices. But like the first step is really having the work instructions working, and then you can start adding more complexity. Because we don't want like complex solution that would be difficult to maintain. We want you to be in control of your solution.
Well, we are just about out of time, but we have one more question that I'd like us to get to, because it's about the more complex environments. It seems like, you know, we've been talking about the getting started and the simpler ones, but what can you say about how your solution handles more complex environments, such as multiple SKUs or product variants or things like that?
So yeah, exactly. That would be one of the next steps, right? So we have customers who deal with like complex manufacturing. We talked about DMG Mori earlier, for example, who is like a machine builder, and we have other machine builders working with us, and they have very complex product they need to work on with almost like engineering to order kind of products, right? So every customer can customize their product. So how do you make sure that the operator like builds the right part and picks the right components, for example? So that's more integration with ERPs or PLMs, for example, where you can retrieve like the up-to-date bill of material, for example, for each product. You can configure this in the solution. So you'll be able to have this kind of configurable product inside Tulip that will display like the same work instructions, but just with configuring information to support those more complex areas.
Well, we are just about at our time, so I would like to thank both of our speakers, Jen and Sebastian. I'd like to thank you very much for your presentation today. It was quite excellent.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. And thank you for everyone for attending.
Excellent. Well, then on behalf of Automation.com and Tulip, I thank you all for your attention, and this concludes our presentation today.